Hey guys, welcome to Daily Devo Day 13. Today we're going to be in Romans chapter 13, and the entire chapter is only 14 verses, so it's a pretty short chapter this week. But I am only going to go through lines 8 through 10, so I really encourage you guys to go back and read the entire chapter. So lines 8 through 10 says, "Let no debt remain outstanding, except the continuing debt to love one another, for whoever loves others has fulfilled the law. The commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and whatever other command there may be, are summed up in this one command. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no harm to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law." So in verses 8 and 10, we hear this idea of love fulfilling the law. And so I kind of want to give us some background on what the law is. And so in Exodus 20, God gave Moses the 10 commandments, which this verse read a few of them. And so the 10 commandments is kind of the basis of Israel's covenant relationship with God. Okay, they wanted to build this relationship with God. And so with these 10 commandments, the Jewish people, as time went on, they started to create more laws to honor what God asked of them in the 10 commandments. So there's this idea that there's 10 commandments, and then there's a ton of laws in our Old Testament that back up and that obey what God has put in place for the Jewish people at this time. So now that we kind of have an idea about what the law is, I'm going to read verses 9 and 10 again. So 9 says, "The commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and whatever other command there may be, are summed up in this one command. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no harm to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law." So I love this idea, the verse that says, love your neighbor as yourself. And it says, love does not hurt a neighbor. Love does not hurt anyone. And so when we love other people, we are fulfilling this law, fulfilling all the laws that God had put in place for us. And the Jewish people also put in place these laws to help them obey what God was saying. And so I think this idea of loving someone and loving other people seems so easy, but I think for many of us, it's one of the biggest challenges for us to actually obey, because someone did you wrong, or you don't like the values that this person has, and all of these different things kind of keep us from loving people. But God calls us to love. Like through everything, that's what God calls us to do. And so I think that there's this idea that we struggle to be obedient to God in this command because of those reasons. And so another part that I think too, I'm going to read that line again. It says, love your neighbor as yourself. I think we forget this idea of as yourself, right? So if we don't love who we are, which I think many of us today do not love who we are. We don't love the people we hang out with. We don't love what they believe in, but we want to conform to them. We want to fit into their groups. And so when we try to conform and fit in with the wrong crowd of people, there's no way that we can love who we truly are. And so I think that because this world is fallen and it's broken and it's sinful, that we live in this place of insecurity, which I know I've struggled with personally as well, of just like not knowing my value, not knowing my worth, right? And so there's this whole idea of like not loving ourselves. So we can't, if it says love your neighbor as yourself and we don't love who we are, it's going to be very hard to love others. And so I think that Satan wins. He's winning in this space when we're insecure and when we think all of these negative thoughts. And so I think it's time to let Jesus win. And we got to remember that God created us so beautifully and so perfectly and so unique, with the hopes that we would love every inch of who he created us to be. And so our job is to really start working on loving ourselves if we don't already, because we cannot love other people if we don't love who we are. And so I think that's why this can be a big challenge, but this line is so important because God really just calls us to love. We see that in the Bible a ton, and Jesus's teachings pointed to this idea of two commands: love the Lord your God and love your neighbor as yourself, right? Love others as you would love yourself. And so if we can't love ourselves, it's going to be really hard to love other people. I think many of us love God and love who he is and what he's done in our lives. I don't think I doubt that at all. I think I see more of our struggle when we try to love others, but we don't have a good grasp of loving who we are. And so I think that once we get down loving the Lord our God and loving others as ourselves, right, and serving other people and doing things for them, I think those two commands fulfill all of the laws that God has put in place for us. Okay, so the first 4 commandments that God had put in place talk about loving God and the love that he has for us. And the last 6 commandments really talk about how we can love other people. And so all 10 of those are encompassed in this whole idea of love. And so what I want you guys to think about this week and just today is, does the way you love and value yourself, does that correlate with the way you love people? Okay, so I really want you to dig deep in your soul and think about, do I love who I am? Truly, do I love who I am? And if I do, does that reflect on the way that I love people? And if it doesn't, what can we do to work on that and change that? Thanks for listening to Romans 13, you guys. I hope you go back and read the entire chapter. Remember, it's really short, but it has lots of good information. Don't forget, tonight at 6:30 p.m., we're going live on our Facebook for our Move Wednesdays. And don't forget, this Sunday is Easter Sunday. So I'm encouraging all of you to log in with your friends, log in with your families, and go on and watch our Easter service on YouTube or Facebook. Have a good day.